So I'd like to welcome Trine Bregstein from the Freshwater Biological Association to talk to us about the Riverfly Partnership and the monitoring that goes on within this fantastic network of volunteers and conservation professionals. So over to you, Trine, and look forward to hearing the talk.
Lovely. Hi, Kieran. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here and to be doing my first proper Riverfly talk. So firstly, I want to caveat my talk by saying that I'm not an entomologist, but I am passionate about people, science, the environment, and how these things come together. So I'll start with a little bit about me, a tiny little bit. I did my degree in environmental science. I've worked in outdoor education. I've taught secondary science, went a little bit off piste for a few years, then came back to conservation. And I joined the Freshwater Biological Association a year and a half ago. I was working on 2 citizen science projects, but now I'm just focusing on Riverfly. As of June this year, I stepped into the role of development manager. So I will tell you now a little bit about the history of the partnership. It was conceived by some really amazing people as a way for anglers to monitor the watercourses that they were spending time on. The anglers were noticing the decline of fish and fly life, and they were reporting this to the Environment Agency, but it was anecdotal, and really what the agency needed was cold, hard data. So going back to the very start, the late 90s, early 2000s, there were several people who were working on the birth of the partnership, if you will. So Dr. Cyril Bennett was pioneering the sampling methodology for anglers to assess the rivers. And he was running numerous courses each year at the John Speed and Lewis Trust's Field Centre at Leckford, which is on the River Test. At around the same time, Steve Brooks and others at the Natural History Museum were delivering entomology courses. So eventually the two sort of meshed, and these courses were delivered nationally. The Environment Agency also came along to take part in the conversation. They saw the value of this as a good way for anglers to share their concerns and findings through actual data rather than sort of anecdotal hearsay, if you will. So with actual data, it could open a proper dialogue with the statutory bodies. And so time went on. The flagship monitoring method, ARMI, A-R-M-I, or Anglers Riverfly Monitoring Initiative, was launched, and then the Riverfly Partnership was formed. And the best way to think about the partnership is as a dynamic network of organizations that are all feeding into this enormous citizen science project. So there's rivers trusts, anglers, wildlife trusts, academics, ecologists, scientists, river restoration organizations, statutory bodies, landowners, conservationists, entomologists, watercourse managers, and so on. So it really is a massive partnership. And everyone has this common goal of conserving these vital habitats, expanding our knowledge, and protecting the water quality in the rivers. And of course, the very beating heart of this enormous citizen science project are the volunteers, the citizen scientists who are out there month in, month out throughout the year. They're the ones, you know, who are going out. Their enthusiasm, their effort, their knowledge, their local insight. If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't really be sitting here having this conversation, because I don't think we'd have an awful lot to talk about. So thank you so much to all of the volunteers for the Riverfly Partnership. So the partnership itself isn't an entity in its own right. Rather, it's hosted by other charitable organizations. So in the past, it was with the Salmon and Trout Conservation Trust, but it's currently hosted by the Freshwater Biological Association. And it sits really nicely within the citizen science offering by the FBA and fits neatly under this umbrella here of freshwater science and conservation. And the FBA offer things that are really complementary to what Riverfly does. So they have lots of courses on offer, such as entomology for anglers, freshwater invertebrate sampling and ID, biotic assessment, algal ID, macrophytes, you name it, lots of different courses. And they also have a ton of amazing publications for people who are interested in riverflies. So we've got the British and Irish stoneflies, caddisfly adults, mayfly larvae of Britain and Ireland. There's a guide to freshwater invertebrates and so much more. And we also have the Freshwater Biology and Ecology Handbook, which is a practitioner's guide to improving and protecting river health with a focus on invertebrate monitoring and assessment. And that is a free download. So get yourselves onto that website and grab yourselves a free download of that. And the other thing that the FBA has going for it is its fellows. There's so many amazing freshwater scientists that we can call on for help and guidance. And one particular fellow, John Davy Bowker, you may have seen his name recently. He was sort of splashed across Chester Zoo's Twitter because of the part that he played in the discovery of a critically endangered stonefly that had been declared extinct. That was the scarce yellow Sally mayfly in the Dee. So Chester Zoo, along with BugLife Cymru, and with the help of John, have been running a successful breeding project. So yeah, you'll see John is actually in a couple of those pictures, sharing words of wisdom with yours truly. And he's also part of the group that brought the extended scheme to life, which I will tell you more about later. So there's links for the books and the courses that are going to go into the chat as well. So then, riverflies, what are they? They are absolutely fascinating tiny creatures which just blow my mind. Again, I want to reiterate, I'm no entomologist, but they are so fascinating. Also, I believe that we owe the term riverflies to the very first coordinator who was employed by the partnership, and that was Bridget Peacock. They were probably referred to as freshwater macroinvertebrates before then, but riverflies is a little bit catchier. So I'll be honest, I didn't know an awful lot about them when I joined the partnership, but it's been a real pleasure to learn over the last year and a half. And that's partly due to the teachers that I've had. So my first riverfly training course was delivered by Stuart Crofts, who is such an inspirational chap and a tutor extraordinaire. And as you saw in the previous slides, I've taken several courses here with John Davy Bowker. So I'm very lucky indeed. Now, on to the animals. They are, as I say, just fascinating. They have an evolutionary history going back hundreds of millions of years, and they will spend the majority of their life in the water as nymphs or larvae, feeding on plant life and algae, doing important work of keeping things clean and stopping the buildup of too much detritus. Others are predatory and feed on smaller aquatic inverts. So under the water, they're all there, busy with their little lives, and some are busy making cases from leaves, twigs, tiny pebbles, gravel and sand. They are amazing little underwater architects. And these caddisfly larvae, they obtain oxygen, which is dissolved in the water through thin, soft skin. So some of the species have these frilly gills on the sides of their bodies, and they will undulate their body to create a flow of oxygenated water through their cases. It's really, yeah, just fascinating. Elsewhere in the stream, you'll find some that are clinging to rocks in the faster moving waters, so their body shape reflects where they live. Some of them create little shelters from rocks and their silk. They also build little nets outside of these shelters where they will trap food that's passing, so algae and organic material. And they make these nets from a silk that they extrude from their mouths, or rather a gland that's under their chin in their jaw. And it's essentially a bit like double-sided sticky tape, which works in water, and it has a little bit of elasticity to it. They're just, yeah, they're fascinating. I keep saying it because they just really are. So depending on the species, the life cycles are broadly similar. Egg, and then to either nymph or larvae. The nymphs will molt several times. They shed their skins as they grow, and then they emerge. And the larva will pupate and then emerge. And as adults, some will live for a day or two, like mayflies. Others will live for a few weeks or a month, like the stoneflies and caddisflies. And the aim of the game as adults is obviously to procreate. So let's go a little bit more in depth into the mayflies. When it's ready to emerge, it will shed its skin, making its way to the surface, and it gets ready to take flight. Now, on the river surface, when they sort of first emerge, they're called duns. They're quite dull in appearance, and they've got very fine hairs all over them to assist them in staying on the surface of the water. And so while they're there on the surface, probably trying to get their bearings, that's prime time, danger time. They could get snaffled by a duck or a moorhen or a hungry fish waiting for a tasty snack. If they make it to the safety of the bank, they then shed their skins again and emerge as a spinner, which is glossier with a longer tail, and then they get ready for action. Now they're racing against the clock. They may have hours or maybe a couple of days, but the name of the game is to get mating. They can't feed when they're in this stage because they don't have functioning mouth parts or a digestive system. So they only have the energy that they emerged with. So they really are, racing against the clock. So they take to the air and they sort of propel themselves upwards and sort of bob about in the air. They go up, they come down, and they're sort of all bobbing about. And then mating is done on the wing. And then once that is done, that is it for the males. They're excused. But the females, they've still got a job to get done, and that is to lay the eggs. So they will return to the surface of the water, they dip down, they lay their eggs on the water surface. And then that is it. It's all over. And if they've made it this far, they've got the job done, they've ensured the next, generation, then they are most definitely a snack for a fish then. Caddisflies and stoneflies, they have a slightly longer adult phase, and they have rudimentary mouth and digestive parts, and they survive on nectar, and their egg laying is slightly different to the mayfly. For example, caddisflies will lay the eggs on vegetation near the water, and so the cycle continues. So they are not only valuable in the ecosystem as these little cleaners of the underwater environment, but they're also a hugely important part of the food chain. If you have a nice clean river, you'll have lots of macroinvertebrates, there are lots of fish, lots of birds, lots of mammals. And if you lose that insect component, then everything above that suffers. And who's this fellow? Clearly not a riverfly. No, that's a canary. And, we call the riverflies the canaries because, like the canary in the coal mine, that was an indicator of a potentially hazardous situation. And so for the riverflies, if they're not, in the river, you can take that as a pretty good indicator that things are not quite right. So we have some wonderful posters on the Riverfly website of the stonefly life cycle, the mayfly life cycle, and also the caddisfly life cycle. Those are free downloads, so you can just pop along there and print them off. They're really handy. And then here, I just wanted to show you what the sort of transformation is from a dun to a spinner. So it comes along and it's breaking out of its skin. There we go. And so there you have the end result, much glossier, ready to get the job done. So for Riverfly monitoring, we look at 8 groups, and you can see them here. We look for the larvae or the nymphs of these species because they tend to be present most of the year. They have limited mobility and they have specific tolerances to pollution and environmental changes. So these are really great indicators of water quality. As we learned earlier, they like clean, oxygenated water. And so these are the groups that you will find in every single format of our monitoring that we offer. And that is 3 different schemes. But I'll take you through RMI first. So the methodology itself, the kick sampling and hand search is carried out in the river, and that is standardized. And that is very, very important. The standardization is key for that data to be accepted and useful to statutory bodies such as the Environment Agency, CPAR, NRW, NIEA. So the time that we take doing the sampling and the equipment that's used, such as the net, that's the same as the Environment Agency. So we're keeping that sort of robustness and that rigor of the data that our, Riverfly Monitor volunteers are collecting. So monitoring takes place once a month, and we look for those 8 groups. So although the monitoring is lower taxonomic resolution than what the Environment Agency might do, it is higher frequency, and that is of great value. So the presence, absence, and the abundance of the riverflies you find will dictate the score that you get. It is a simplified version of the BMWP, and the BMWP is the Biological Monitoring Working Party, which is a procedure for measuring water quality using families of macroinvertebrates as biological indicators. The method is based on the principle that different aquatic invertebrates have different tolerances to pollutants. Riverflies are fussy, and rightfully so. They just want clean water, lots of oxygen, nice flow, some nice habitats to live in. I don't think that's too much to ask, frankly. So during a training day, you'll go through a theory portion in the morning, and then you carry out the practical in the afternoon. You'll learn all about the health and safety aspects that you need to keep in mind when you're working in or around water. There are dangers and things to consider. For example, when you're kick sampling, if you're, say, in a more urban environment, you might encounter rubbish in the river, much more rubbish. You might, there might be a broken glass bottle or, God forbid, a hypodermic needle. So you need to be aware of these things. You need to know the risks and be able to mitigate against them. You need to be aware of things like Weil's disease, Lyme disease that you could catch from ticks. You also will learn about the invasive non-native species that you might encounter, and also the vegetation around, for example, the giant hogweed, which could cause irritation to your skin. It can cause irritation to your skin. So you'll learn all sorts of things to carry out this monitoring in a safe manner. And we always advise that you work in pairs and that you wear your buoyancy aids. And of course, always check, clean and dry so you stop the spread of any invasive species. There's really a lot that goes into a training day. You'll cover some sort of legislative type things as well, like, for example, the Water Framework Directive, which is an EU-wide directive, still applies, which is regarding the status of water bodies and how they are classified. So that could be high, good, moderate, poor, or bad. You'll also learn how to carry out the sampling itself, and then how to ID the invertebrates, and then work out your scores also. After the training, when you set up sites that you want to monitor, each site will be vetted by the ecology contact, and you'll have a trigger level set. So the score is the sort of bottom end of what the site can achieve. So that trigger level, if you go below that, then you have a potential problem on your hands. The canary has fallen off the perch, if you will. So you'll see here, there's a little excerpt from our current database, and it sort of shows that the trigger level for that site is 10, and you can see that there is a sort of pollution event here where it dips down. So the kits, we work with NHBS, and they're available through them. And the guides we sell to coordinators who are organizing the training sessions, and those guides are produced by the Field Studies Council, who I think produced the very first ones way back when, and we're still working with them now. And for the 8-group underlay, you can see over on the right-hand side, there's an underlay under the segmented tray. That was actually developed by one of our volunteers, Dr. Richard Osmond, and he has them on his site. That will appear in the chat as well, the bugdiversity.co.uk site. You can buy those, and they're very handy to put under your segmented tray. So the different kinds of monitoring that the Riverfly Partnership offers. There's RMI or ARMI, and urban, and there's also extended. So RMI is sort of our flagship method, and then urban and extended have been developed more recently and are only just now sort of beginning to gather momentum in the rollout. Up until now, we didn't have the capacity to accept data from those surveys, but now with the advent of our new database, we can, so that's going to speed things up a little bit. So Urban itself was developed by Nicola Edgar at the Environment Agency, I believe with Joe Piccarelli from ZSL as well. And monitors look for an extra 6 groups. So they look for 14 different groups. There's the RMI 8, and then there's a few groups that are more tolerant to pollution or poorer water quality waters. So what we were finding was that volunteers in urban settings or where their river was quite degraded, they weren't able to get the scores, and it was quite frustrating. So hence this was sort of developed. And it meant that, you know, people could still take part and they could still get a score and they could see different groups. And so the new groups, the scoring is relatively similar, but the newer groups will have a negative weighting to them. So yeah, it meant that people could still take part, they could still get a score and gather this valuable data. And then with the extended, we actually look for 33 groups, and it provides more detailed data on the streams and the rivers. And the interpretation of these data is aided by 2 new biotic indices to detect and measure pollution and habitat degradation. So there was quite a few people involved and a couple of organisations involved as well, like the Lincolnshire Chalk Streams Project and Dorset Wildlife Trust. They were all involved in the development of the extended scheme. And I would urge you to go and watch the launch video, which is on FBA's YouTube channel. Again, there's a link for that. You'll get a lot more detailed information on the scheme itself, the rationale for picking those groups, and also more in-depth explanation of the scoring system, which follows on broadly from RMI and Urban with positive and negative weightings. And from the abundance of the species that are present, we also work out water quality, flow, and siltation. So yeah, for more details and to hear more about that and who the developers were that were all, you know, working on that together, then go and watch that video. And whilst you're there on YouTube, you can also check out the extended scheme playlist, where you'll find high quality videos of all of the 33 groups. So in fact, it's really relevant to every single stage of RMI. They're really wonderful videos, high quality. You can see the you know, creatures moving around, and it's very useful to help ID. So yeah, and with the sort of advent of Urban and extended, it kind of provides a really nice progression for volunteers as well. So they can kind of spend some time doing RMI or Urban, and once they're feeling confident in their bankside identification, they're ready to learn a bit more, you can sort of upskill, do a bit more training, and then you can carry out the extended survey. So it's very useful in sort of providing a nice progression pathway there. So how does the partnership work? I've put a couple of little organogram things here to sort of explain how it works in practice. The one on the left is a sort of broad overview, and on the right, you've got more of the sort of monitoring group dynamic. And this is perhaps a good opportunity to dispel a misconception. I feel that sometimes when people get in touch with the Riverfly Partnership, wanting to take part and volunteer, I think they expect us to have maybe offices throughout the UK and that we sort of administer the groups ourselves. But that isn't actually the case. You know, historically, the partnership has had 1 or 2 members of staff at any given time. And here at the, well, the HQ, the mothership, if you will, we sort of act as matchmakers or facilitators. And what we do is you contact us, and then we do our best to put you in touch with your nearest local hub that will offer Riverfly training. So that could be, for example, a Rivers Trust or a Wildlife Trust. And so, although the reach, you know, of the project is absolutely phenomenal, the coverage isn't complete. We don't have the whole of the UK covered. And so there are areas that are kind of devoid of anything happening in terms of Riverfly monitoring. And it can be a bit frustrating sometimes for people when they get in touch with us and we don't really have anything to offer them. There's no local hub nearby that we can, sort of send them to. So in those cases, what we recommend to people is that they try and find other like-minded citizens. Could be a community interest group, or could be an angling group or something like that, and then you can set up your own groups. But essentially we rely on these wonderful hubs, which are these wildlife trusts and rivers trusts, to deliver these riverfly activities for us. And so it kind of nestles really nicely within what they offer for volunteers. It could be that they offer litter picks and Himalayan balsam bashes. Maybe they do water quality testing. They could also offer riverfly monitoring and its various different modes as well. So again, there it kind of creates like a nice progression pathway. So it definitely, we rely on a lot of these organizations throughout the UK to kind of be our riverfly officers on the ground, if you will. And here is a few of the organizations that we work with. It is really just a tiny fraction of the people that we sort of partner with up and down the country. And for the future, what we want to do is work on covering those areas where there are still some gaps. Now, what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about the case studies, past and present. So I'm going to start with Robert Hellawell here. He is an angler and he lives in the Aire Valley in West Yorkshire. He was keeping an eye on his nearest beck, which was the Bradford Beck. And after a couple of pollution incidents in 2009, 2011, he joined the Friends of Bradford's Becks. Through them, he became a riverfly monitor in 2015 and dutifully sampled month in, month out. His scores at his site were generally low, so he surmised that there was an ongoing low-level pollution incident sort of coming from somewhere. Then a few years later, in 2018, he spotted dead fish, grey water with a foul smell, and through his investigations, he traced the source of that pollution to a section of the beck that was culverted. Various reports came in from concerned citizens into the EA regarding the pollution incident, and they investigated along with Yorkshire Water, and they found that there was a faulty sewage system that had discharged illegally in that culverted section. So Rob went out, he sampled upstream, and he found that the scores were good, but below the culvert, the scores were terrible. So you can see here, this is the sort of scoring that he was doing, and here's the pollution incident where the score just completely dips, and that was when that sewage was overflowing. So he compiled all of his evidence, his riverfly scores and all of his photos. He submitted it to the EA, and finally, a few years later, it was found that a lack of regular maintenance to the asset led to this incident. These things take a little while to sort of get put in motion, but it happened eventually, and Yorkshire Water was in fact fined £1.6 million, which was quite the result. So if you want to read more about that, you can check out the Autumn 2022 newsletter, which is on our website, or you can go to the Environment Agency and read the press release on that as well. Moving on, here we have Rebecca Lewis. I tried to find a picture of her smiling into the camera, but there is nothing but pictures of her in the river. I think she must just live in the river. This poor woman, she's out there day in, day out. But she's a real powerhouse, is Rebecca, and I work very closely with her. She's up in Scotland. She works for Bug Life, and she's been training riverfly folks for years now. And she has set up about 27 groups in Scotland. Through Bug Life, she runs the Guardians of Our Rivers project, which is a really fantastic way of connecting communities via riverfly monitoring. And so she recently told me about an event that happened, a pollution event that was noted in Pennycook. It turned up on a Facebook forum. She got on the phone immediately to her monitors that were around the area. She contacted the Musselburgh monitoring crew and she asked them to go and check sites. So she had people all throughout the catchment going out to check their sites. People went out during their lunch breaks to go and carry out a little sampling to see how far that pollution was advancing in the river. So it just allows this kind of real-time tracking of a pollution event to see how significant it is and whether it's still a live event or whether it has sort of passed. So talk about a sense of community there. She just got on the blower and people dropped what they were doing and went out to monitor, to keep their eyes on what was happening. And it's really, really fantastic. It is tremendous commitment to the cause, and Rebecca has she's really succeeding in creating this really lovely community feel. And she's also instrumental in opening up conversations with SEPA again about drumming up a bit more support for Riverfly monitoring. So thank you, Rebecca. Moving on to the other end of the country. So we're going down to Action for the River Kennet now. And this is Anna Forbes, who is teaching the young ones about riverflies. So she told me about a really terrible pollution incident that happened in the summer of 2013 that wiped out macroinvertebrates along a 10-mile stretch of the river, which is, just astounding in an awful way. So firstly, the River Kennet is one of England's premier chalk streams. It's much of it is a site of special scientific interest on account of its chalk stream habitats and the associated wildlife. One of its main tributaries, which is the Lambourne, is also a SSSI and has been designated a special area of conservation. So in July of 2013, on the 1st, there was a major chlorpyrifos, I had to practice that several times, pollution incident. It was picked up by actual Riverfly monitors who were out on behalf of ARC doing their monthly routine sampling. And it was picked up just downstream from the Marlborough sewage treatment works. Chlorpyrifos, for those that don't know, is an organophosphate insecticide. Quite a nasty thing. The authorities were alerted. The insecticide was found to be coming directly from the treatment works, and most likely they think it was a sort of down the drain situation. Further water testing happened later on, sort of week or week and a half later, and they found that actually it was undetectable in the water by that point. But that one single pulse on the 1st of July wiped out pretty much everything. Monitoring after that event found that there was a 99.5% reduction in the abundance of the RMI8. So as we know, the invertebrates, if they aren't there, they're at that bottom, they're part of that sort of food web. If they're not there, then that's going to cause problems further up. So it was really, I think quite enormous, the impact that sort of event had. And what she said was that the EA estimated that it was just an egg cup full of this chemical that had caused this wide-ranging devastation. So it's really quite something. There is a paper that was written about this, and we'll publish the link to that. The map here that you can see, that's actually from that paper. So you can see the Riverfly monitoring sites that are above and below the pesticide entry point. It's really a fascinating paper. I would urge you to pop along and read that as well. Okay, and so now we're going north and we're going to the Yorkshire Dales Rivers Trust. Now, this is one of the newest groups that has just joined, and I emailed the coordinator to ask what the impetus was for setting up. And I had read about a potential incident that I thought maybe that was the driving force for it, and it turns out that it was. So Martha McBarron responded, and she gave me a super response that kind of covered all aspects of what happened. So in April, the release of untreated slurry ran into the local beck for about 15 hours. It was picked up quickly by the early morning dog walkers in Ravensworth and Washington. who reported it to the Environment Agency, the local rivers trusts, and also the Homedale Community Nature Group. The pollution resulted in a catastrophic fish kill and lamprey as well in the becks. So following the incident, there was, a lot of concern, and many people and many organizations were keen to take some action. So Martha herself had previously been trained in riverfly monitoring with the Wear Rivers Trust. So she contacted the Yorkshire Dales Rivers Trust to see if she could set up a couple of sites to monitor the recovery of the becks. Ben Lamb from the Tees Rivers Trust provided some spare kit. And in the meantime, Ron Wood, chairman of a local fly fishing group, had opened a crowdfunding appeal and was mobilizing the local angling community to provide support. So the angling groups had already been collaborating with Jonathan Gray, Research and Conservation Officer from the Wild Trout Trust, and he agreed that riverfly monitoring would be useful in this situation. So Marie Taylor, the CEO of the Yorkshire Dales Rivers Trust, put everybody in touch with each other and also with the ecology contacts at the Environment Agency. Subsequently, 2 training sessions were held in late July, and 19 new volunteers were trained in RMI, including 9 local residents, 9 anglers, and the new volunteer coordinator for the Yorkshire Dales Rivers Trust. Funding for the training courses and the monitoring equipment was provided by Yorkshire Dales Rivers Trust, also the angling groups, and the parish council as well. And with help from the Environment Agency, that was Aaron Murphy and Rachel Spry, and also Ron Wood from the Fly Fishing Association, they looked at previous monitoring sites. They identified some new ones that would cover the Homedale and Skeeby Beck, including the tributaries down to its confluence with the Swale. So it was a real partnership, all of these people working together, and then they sought the permissions from the landowners, they were granted, and riverfly monitoring could commence. So in August, all of the sites that they'd identified were monitored for the first time. Martha went along with each pair for their first session to make sure that they were confident in the sampling technique and also the identification of the invertebrates. And she tells me that they are a great group to work with. They're all very enthusiastic and very committed. And you can see here a map of where all of their sites are and the results from the first round of monitoring. So the good news, Martha tells me, is that all 8 target groups were found at most of the sites, albeit in relatively low populations. But honestly, that's partnership and collaboration across the board. It's a really terrific case study of just how riverfly monitoring can bring all of these different groups together. It's fantastic work. Good job, guys. So I'll now move on to kind of the current stats and what we're, looking to the future. And so we've got up on the top here some stats that we report to the Environment Agency. We report those every year, and they compile the fisheries report using those stats. And the reason we report to them is that historically, Riverfly Partnership has been funded primarily by the EA from rod license fees and a few other smaller pots of money. And this will still be the case going forward. And honestly, it amazes me the sort of reach and scope that the partnership has managed so far on a not enormous budget, and with 1 or potentially 2, part-time members of staff at any given time. And I think it really is a testament to sort of how useful and valuable RMI is for all of the organizations and for the volunteers. And that it's managed to sort of be so widespread on a shoestring budget, really. So looking towards the future, FBA managed to secure some tremendous funding from the Esme Fairbairn Foundation. They put a bid in for a grant last year, and in December that was awarded. So that was a total of £330,000, which is going to be used over the next 3 years, which puts the partnership in a more, financially secure and sustainable position. And there's now funding to recruit more staff. which is fantastic. We've already got one new coordinator in post, that's Beth. She's been working with me for a couple of weeks now, and in another couple of weeks, we will be joined by Ellen. And I, for one, am really looking forward to having a team of 3 at your disposal. It's going to be fantastic to have colleagues and, so many people working on the project and having this, sort of drive forward. It's been quite full on this last year. It's just been me working on it, and I've kind of done my best. And it's been some monumental plate spinning at times. And, I'll be the first to admit that a couple of plates came crashing down. But thank you all for your patience and for bearing with us. And, there are some really good times ahead. There are good things coming. And one of those really good things is the advent of our new database. We are migrating from the one that we currently use to Cartographer, and that is happening as we speak. It's going to be really intuitive, much easier to use, and the great thing about it is that we'll be able to have army scores, urban scores, and extended scores all side by side, which we weren't able to do before. So this is really fantastic. Dave Gannell from Cartographer has imported all of the data that we have so far and all of the users. And Beth and I are busy trying to wrap our heads around the new system, and we'll slowly be inviting groups to join, and we'll do a sort of final mop-up of data from the old database and look forward just on Cartographer. So that's one great thing. What we're also working on is a sort of slightly longer term project, and we're working on that with some folks from the Environment Agency, some academics, some partner organizations. And that is a sort of targets and triggers system. So at the moment, each site gets a trigger score set by the statutory body. And that is kind of like the minimum that you sort of are expecting. If you go below that, you have a problem. But what we want to do is give people a target score as well. So, this is the potential that could be achieved at your site. Maybe through some river restoration or maybe through some habitat improvements, that kind of thing. But yeah, so we're working on that. It's going to be, quite a long-term project. So yeah, it'll happen at some point, but it's definitely something we want to give people a target, a trigger. It's something to aim for. The other thing that we're feeding into is CASCO, which is the Catchment Systems Thinking Cooperative. Is a really enormous project. It's a 3-year project, which is run by the Rivers Trust with funding from Ofwat and UU, United Utilities. And the broad aim of it is to include communities in collecting and sharing river catchment data to improve our understanding of the rivers and ultimately to improve river health. So citizen science, like RMI and many other schemes, they're already being used to collect data. But what we need to do is kind of standardize all of that and make the data shareable between all of these organizations so we can all utilize that data to, to its best potential kind of thing. So yeah, there's lots of partner organizations, the Environment Agency, environmental NGOs, specialist advisors, universities, water companies. It's quite the undertaking. And yeah, as I say, the aim is to standardize citizen science, coming up with a sort of agreed approach to the training, to the monitoring, and also the sharing of the data. And one of the things they have coming up is this coming weekend, actually, it is the Big River Watch. So it's much like, say, the Big Garden Bird Watch or the Big Butterfly Count. It's a way of introducing volunteers with no prior experience to some easily learned methods. So Riverwatch will sort of aim to generate some useful data, raise awareness about freshwater issues, and hopefully enthuse a really diverse group of people, inspiring them to get involved in other citizen science schemes around the country as well, around the UK. So yeah, all you need to do is download the Big Riverwatch app, which you can get from the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. You pop along to your river this weekend, your nearest river, spend 15 minutes, and then you just do a survey on the app and you tell the Rivers Trust what you see. And it really couldn't be simpler. I really hope that loads of people will take part in that. And the link will go up for that as well on the Rivers Trust website. Take action, the big river watch. And so how to get involved? Right, well, if you've got a phone, you can open up your phone, your camera, and scan that QR code that's on your screen now. It will take you to the Get Involved page, which is on our website. There you can watch a little video of ARC coordinator Anna Forbes, who's carrying out a wee kick sample, so you can kind of get a bit of a flavour of what happens. There's also information on the costs involved, if you're a group, if you're in an area that isn't covered by a hub. So you can kind of find out what the costs would be to set up a little scheme for yourself. So the cost for the kits, the training packs, tutor fees as well. So we have tutors who are sort of dotted around the country, and we'll put you in touch with your nearest one. And yeah, so, you know, there's lots of information there. You can also send us an email to info@riverflies.org, and we will put you in touch with your nearest hub. If you are lucky enough to be in an area that is covered by a hub, you can just go along to a training session. And what I would say is just bear in mind that a lot of the training sessions tend to happen in the springtime. So there might not be anything for you to do at the moment, but you can register your interest, and maybe while you wait, you can get involved in some other volunteering opportunities that they have. And lastly, I wanted to share this image, which was from some Riverfly monitors down in Kent on the Dower. They found this little caddisfly, this cased caddis, who had incorporated a piece of plastic into his case, that bright blue thing there that you can see. It's not ideal. Microplastics going into our waterways, it is a problem. We know it is, and we need to do something about it. And, you know, more and more we see videos and photos of animals having to deal with the consequences of our actions, living in our rubbish or dealing with pollution that we cause, coping in smaller, fragmented areas. And it isn't just, you know, the sea turtles and the whales and the pandas and the tigers. It also affects the tiniest residents of our planet too. And we need to do what we can for them. We need to advocate for them. And that's where Riverfly monitoring comes in. And that's it. Thank you so much.